Okay. Some of my earliest memories regarding mother had to do with, I think she read to me the story of Jesus Christ and his crucifixion.
Okay.
And we lived in the little house by the river, by the creek. And I just remember saying to her, if I had lived then, I wouldn't have let them do that, or something like that.
Okay.
And I remember she just kind of smiled, which mother, one of the most distinctive things about mother for me was how often she just smiled, which said a lot to me. That different kind of smile or look in her eyes. Stories of when she was really young. I think we will have to go to, because very specific stories of her at this moment, in any case. I know I should have lots of them. I can tell you stories that surrounded us all at the time. Well, I can tell you about her relationship with Uncle Will. Uncle Will was...
That's not
Aunt
Wallace.
Lita. No.
Okay.
Aunt Lita, who was Grandpa's sister, was married to Will Aldred. And
okay.
I don't recall him as a very nice man.
Okay.
Kind of grumpy. We had a dog named Duke. And Duke was very protective. In fact, Duke leapt into the swollen stream and pulled Terry out when he was just a little boy. And we were all playing down by the creek, which I don't think we should have been. But in those days, kids did a lot of things that today would be, whatever. But anyway, but Duke hated Uncle Will. And Uncle Will would come charging out of his house across the street from us, saying to my mother, yelling at her, I'm going to shoot that dog. I'm going to shoot that dog. Anyway, Duke was special. I loved Duke. And I used to think Duke came to meet me when I walked home from school. So I must have been I wasn't in kindergarten, I was in the first grade, but I went to first grade early. So I was probably 5. Anyway, so one day mother was going to spank Terry. And Terry had to be just a little guy, but still she was probably going to give him a swat. And Duke came charging out from behind the chair and bit mother. And bit mother on the forehead.
Wow.
Yeah. So mother decided that she had to have Duke put down.
Oh.
That was so sad, because I do remember coming home and Duke wasn't there. Duke didn't meet me. And
so
anyway,
Mom, the Duke had to be put down.
Duke had to be put down. Yeah. Well, according to mother. And I can see how she would feel intimidated, by the dog.
Sure.
If she gave any of us a swat. Anyway, that is a memory. Another memory of mother is when Daddy got his organ. We lived in that same house.
You got what?
An organ. It was
an organ. Okay.
Pedal organ. It was one with stops and bellows, but the only way it would play is if you push the pedals. And it was really quite a pretty organ. And I don't know how they afforded it, but it came. It was delivered, and he was thrilled. And I could just remember the two of them standing in our little living room and inspecting that organ. And I remember it had red velvet. Maybe the pedals were red something. Anyway, it was pretty. And Daddy sat down and started to play. And I stood up on a chair and started to lead the music. And mother said, look, Berkeley. And that was, of course, me, the star of the show there, leading the music as Daddy played the organ. So I wonder if we have a picture of that organ anywhere. It went with us.
I've never heard of it before.
Oh, it went with us everywhere until Toppenish. I think he donated it to the Toppenish ward or branch. But it traveled with us, and I think it was one of Daddy's, we had a piano as well. I don't remember the piano before Toppenish, but we had the piano and we had the organ in Toppenish. In any case, it served it in Anaconda. It was in the basement, and they played it for junior Sunday school. And of course, I don't remember it being played in our home that much, except that one memory that I have of its arrival and the pleasure it brought to Mother and Daddy.
I remember as a kid, Dad playing the organ, and I used to remember several of the songs. The one song I remember that he used to play and we would sing along as kids is Dumbo the elephant, Dumbo
Yes.
the elephant. He's got such a big long nose.
Yes.
Dumbo the elephant, Dumbo the elephant reaches to his toes.
That's right. Well, that book, that little book, was brought home from Salt Lake when Mother and Daddy visited Salt Lake, and I believe we lived in Toppenish. I don't believe we were in Yakima yet, but we might have been. Anyway, it was a bright yellow book with pretty, very delightful drawings, paintings on it. And we, I remember singing those songs.
So you had the same book.
We had the same book. I have that book because I think Marcel got me a copy. So I think you could still get one. And
okay, I don't have any memory of what it's called, and I know there were other songs. I just, off the top of my head, that's the only one that I'm remembering.
Well, I had a birthday and now I'm 5. I'm the happiest kid alive. I want to know this. I want to know why do birds fly or something. Anyway, I might be mixing up 2 songs. So it is a tradition in our house, starting with either Toppenish or Yakima, and Daddy playing the songs. So, cool. And Mother used to, when we lived in Toppenish, when we lived in Anaconda, Mother was, let's see, Afton was a baby, or she was a toddler at that time, and before she got pregnant with Nancy. I remember there was a probably golden green ball, something like that. And the neighbor, Leela Webking, dressed Mother up for that ball. And she, I don't know where she got the dress, but it was a pretty long gown. And then she fixed Mother's hair into what was called then an upsweep. And so it was up high on her head with lots of curls. And then she used sugar water because we didn't have hairspray then. She used sugar water to hold Mother's upsweep up. And I just remember sitting there watching and thinking how beautiful she was. Just so pretty. And of course, at that time, she wouldn't even have been 30. Let's see, Anaconda. Well, that was after the war. So she might have been 29 by then.
Okay.
Something like that. Anyway.
Do you have any memories of Mother during the war when Dad's gone and you and Mom and Bruce and Marcel and Bruce and Terry?
I do. I remember quite a few, and I'm glad you reminded me of that. When we lived in Butte when Daddy got his draft noticed, and he was told when he was in Weiser by the draft board there that he could safely go to Butte because the Boy Scouts were promoting him in some way, and he needed to go there. So he went there, but within a short time, he was drafted. And I can just remember Mother at the door getting that telegram.
Mm.
And I don't remember what she said. I just remember her look, her, well, it was a great worry, you know, really worried look.
Sure.
And while we lived in Butte, she lost her wedding ring, and she lost it in the, you can picture a coal stove. And I don't know what they call that part of the stove where you put the kindling and the coal and stuff, but the something box, firebox. Anyway, she thought she'd lost it in the firebox. So I remember her spreading a newspaper out on the kitchen floor in Butte and emptying all those ashes out on the floor.
Wow.
And I believe she found her wedding ring.
Wow.
My guess is, because certainly in my earlier days, my fingers got so thin from a lack of food and overwork, and poor mother the same, I'm sure, that it was easy to lose the rings, and I lost my engagement ring that way, not in a firebox. But anyway, she was very distressed until she found that ring. Also in Anaconda, this is before the war. This is before Daddy went to the war, but the war was going on, and
Right.
we had blackouts where we had to close all the blinds, all the curtains, no lights, and there were squadrons of planes that would go over bombers, and there's a certain sound to that you just never forget. Anyway, it was Christmas time, and Mother had us at a table cutting out from the most beautiful, shiny, kind of like aluminum foil, but it was the most gorgeous blue. It was just a heavenly blue.
Hmm.
She had us cutting out stars and that kind of thing for our Christmas tree. And then she had us make paper chains. And of course, I'm sure we had no Christmas lights of any kind because we didn't have any until maybe Yakima, but we probably had globes, Christmas globes. In
Right.
any case, so we were busy doing that. I just remember that as a really pleasant memory. The other thing I remember is it was very, very cold. It was wintertime. And just being outdoors, aching, not my shoulders, my elbows even would be aching from the cold. And that certain look in the sky when the sun is going down in the winter. And I could smell fried potatoes.
Oh.
We had a lot of fried potatoes. Anyway, that was such a wonderful smell. And coming in that door to Mother's fried potatoes. I'm sure we had other things, but that's a special memory that that my nose has of
Right.
home.
Yeah.
And when I was in the first grade, I'm switching now. I'm going to go back though to we had to leave Weiser and go. We had to leave Butte to go back to Weiser. But on the way to Butte, by the way, our car broke down. And we had to stop in a little town. I think Daddy called it Monida, a combination of Montana and Idaho. Monida.
Okay.
And to wait for a part or something. So we stayed in a hotel overnight. And it was a hotel like doesn't exist anymore, I'm sure.
Okay.
We walked up the stairs, all of us, our little troop, and all these men, older men sitting, well, they were older to me, sitting down in a sort of parlor, staring at us as we walked up those stairs, and everything smelled of cigar and tobacco smoke. Anyway, I just remember mother washing my hair in the sink of that hotel room. Anyway, when I think of these things, I think of the hardships really that mother endured all the time. Because we weren't wealthy, because Daddy wasn't one to really plan ahead, as I think you already know. And he was a risk taker and mother was not a risk taker. So these adventures, I don't know if he ever said to her, Mary, what do you think about me going to Butte? Or I just don't know if I never heard him say anything like that. I think it was just assumed that what he needed or wanted or thought was best would be best. And I've thought of him as a very benign, absent-minded patriarch. It's just because what he decided to do, he would do.
Right.
And I know that mother wasn't always happy about it at all. But she did go along. Anyway, so in Butte, when we first got to Butte, still before Daddy went to war, we lived in this, first of all, this wonderful house with hardwood floors and French doors. And mother was very pregnant with Afton. Grandmother Chandler came to stay when mother actually gave birth to Afton. And Grandma Compton came to stay when mother either later or before, I don't know which, but they both came at different times. And then we moved to the little house on what was called the Flats. And that's the one where I remember the fried potatoes and mother trying to find her ring and Christmas songs. The one Christmas song, especially remember, and I don't know if I've just put that Christmas song in that place or if it actually was there, but it was, of course, White Christmas with Bing Crosby.
Right.
My first memory of that. Mother, I'm sure mother was aware of how much I loved paper dolls because I seemed always to have them. And in that home, I had Shirley Temple paper dolls. And which I loved. And I loved paper dolls until I almost until I got married. And I'd love to have them now because I could probably make $1 million off of them.
So what made it a Shirley Temple paper doll? Was it colored a certain way, or was her photo on it, or what made it a Shirley Temple paper doll?
Well, I guess you don't know about paper dolls.
I just picture a doll cut out of paper.
It came in a little book.
Okay.
It came in a book, and in the book was a doll that you had to punch out or cut out. I can't recall. And then there were pages of clothes.
Okay, I do remember seeing that kind of thing. I just didn't remember that's what you were referring to. So yes. you'd cut out the clothes, and then you could have. They
had little tabs on the shoulders, and you could pin them onto the paper doll that way. And there were stories that I'm sure were meant to be good for us, like Shirley Temple would tell us how to brush our teeth or something. I don't know. Anyway. But before I forget, I want to have you remind me of when we get to Toppenish that mother and I read books together.
Okay.
But now we did have to go back to Weiser, and Daddy, of course, always scared us. Well, later in his life, because he'd fall asleep at the wheel. But it seemed to us and to mother that Daddy would get way too close to the edge of a road. And the roads in those days were just 2-lane highways. And I can remember myself driving back from Butte to Weiser in frigid, frigid weather and looking down these steep ravines at the tops of pine trees and just being terrified and remembering mother saying, Berkeley, Berkeley. Oh, mother. Or, oh, Mary.
I have a memory of mom saying that we were driving somewhere across Nevada or Utah, and we had driven through much of the night, and it was about dawn. There was just a little light in the horizon in the morning, and Dad fell asleep, and we went off the road sliding through the sagebrush.
Oh.
And mom saying, Berkeley, Berkeley. As we just, luckily we didn't hit anything, and there was no,
Yeah.
I mean, we could have, any number of things could have happened. We just slid through the sagebrush and came to a stop without any significant damage or injury, thankfully.
I think it's an illness of some sort, but in any case, he devised, all kinds of contraptions to keep himself awake.
Right.
But that's another story. Anyway, though, when we got back to Weiser, we stayed with Grandmother Chandler for a while. I remember Daddy bought Mother, so this would have been in February, a Valentine's card. And he gave it to Mother in Grandma Chandler's house. And she said, oh, Berkeley, something to this extent. You should not have spent the money, almost angry. And he got angry and stormed out of the house. Oh. And I just felt so, I think I said something like, is he coming back or something? I don't remember. Anyway, just one of those little misunderstandings. But then he did leave for war. And I have in my mind, it was Camp Lejeune that he was at, but I am not sure. I thought it was in Oregon.
So I have to interject a question here. So I've heard Dad told the story of driving from Butte back to Weiser, and this harrowing story of flat tires and the car breaking down. And do you remember that drive?
Well, we made that drive several times, so I'm not sure which is which. But yes, I do. Afton was a baby, and I can remember being in the car in the back seat, and I remember it was cold. I don't think the car had much of a heater, but I remember Mother singing that song she always sang to the babies, Lullaby and Good Night, the first few stanzas of that song to Afton, who would have been in her arms. And we did run out of gas. And it was really dark. And I remember watching Daddy, or Daddy got out of the car and walked toward a light, which apparently was a farmhouse or something. So it seemed to me that he came back with someone or something. And I imagine he got some gas from that house in those days. And we had this happen when Carmen and I were traveling. Farmers often had a tank of gas, kind of lying on its side, but on props of some kind. And so I suspect that might have been the case. So yes, we had lots of car trouble. In fact, it was car trouble that stopped us in Monida, both ways, going and coming. And Daddy traded his most favorite hunting jacket for working on his car, I think. And then when he came back, it seems to me we had car trouble again. But it seems to me he might have had some money because I think he bought his jacket back or something. I wish I had recorded his stories that he told us here in this house. Oh, I wish I had. So awful. Anyway, yes, I remember lots of car trouble, lots of dangerous roads and cold and night. And yes, in fact, when we lived at some point, either in Butte or Anaconda, Daddy took us to what was called the Continental Divide. Well, I had in my mind, I had no idea what it was, but to me it was like a big division between in the middle of the continent or something.
Right.
And anyway, Daddy drove us up to the Continental Divide, and anyway, there's a call that we will not pay attention to right this minute.
Okay.
And anyway, when we got up there, the road was extremely narrow, and Daddy had to do, he had to back up and go forward and back up and go forward. Are you still there?
I am still here.
I've
You're-
lost you. I don't see you.
Somehow when that call came through, it changed your camera setting or something, but I'm still here and I can still hear you just fine. I just don't see you anymore. I'm not sure what you need to do on your end.
If I hit this X, I think it will get rid of you. So I won't do it. Anyway, I can remember Mother again, and all of us. I mean, at least I was so frightened that we were going to fall off of this Continental Divide, and and Mother was, oh, Berkeley. Anyway, he finally got us turned around and back down to eventually to safety. Anyway, it's interesting looking back. Both of our parents were very inquisitive, intelligent people.
Okay.
Mother loved to read. Mother loved to debate in those days when she was, really young. And the missionaries loved to be around her. They were older in those days. And she was in her late 20s, early 30s, and a pretty little thing who enjoyed really good conversation. And so she was a thinker.
Okay.
And Daddy, on the other hand, really enjoyed the sort of more for instance, he became very interested and remained very interested, and I'm very interested in the power of the mind.
Okay.
And so I can remember him examining or trying to find out if he could make something happen just by thinking about it. And so it was something held on the end of a string or a rope, and he sat on a chair backwards and braced his arms and just let that hang there, just thinking about it. See if he could make it move. And I don't know if he managed to do that, but that was in Toppenish. And that was when, again, they were in the early 30s, and they both loved beauty. They both loved classical music, and they both loved to learn, but quite different things, generally speaking. But going back to Weiser and the war, Mother did not enjoy living with Grandma Chandler because she had 5 children, and Grandmother's home was immaculate, always.
Wait, Grandmother Chandler or Grandmother Compton?
Grandmother Chandler. So we lived with Grandmother Chandler for a short while. I don't know how
Okay.
long.
Okay, so Grandmother Chandler's home was immaculate.
Always.
Okay.
And Grandmother Compton's was not. But it was just that she, they just had a different approach to housekeeping. Grandmother Chandler's home was always shiny. If it was summertime, she always had a bouquet of roses or something, peonies. In the living room, everything was clean. Grandmother told me when I was a young married woman and we went back to see her and at that point she had just purchased an electric stove. So up to then she had the coal stove. Anyway, something went wrong with it, and then a repairman came and he said he'd never seen such a clean stove. and Grandma was quite proud of that. That tells you. Anyway, so mother was trying to find a place to live in Weiser. And I don't know exactly why she took me with her, but I remember walking with her, at least on one day, if not others, to find a place to live. And I remember there were these green cabins that we passed on Main Street with lots of big trees around them. I don't know if she considered them. I don't know why they're in my mind, but they are. In any case, the result of mother's homelessness was Grandma Compton decided she wanted to go stay with Barbara in Chicago. Barbara had just gotten married to Don Adams, and he was in the Navy, and he was stationed at some base having to do with the Great Lakes. And so Grandma Compton decided to go live with Barbara. And that she made a bargain with mother that mother and all of us could live in her house if mother would take care of Lanny. Now, Lanny was 3 years older than I was. And mother was not really happy with that because she remembered Lanny as an only child, basically, and very spoiled and kind of ornery. But nevertheless, she did, of course, take that on. So Lanny, and when Lanny talked about it up until just recently, he'd always say that we lived with him.
Okay.
And I did not ever correct him, but in any case, so he became a brother in a sense. So mother lived in this house with her 5 children and daddy gone. And she had a lot of worries. One of them was that there were men, and I don't know if this was true or if this was just her anxiety, who were not off to war, but knew that most of the men would go around peeking through windows of women's homes. And so she was really frightened. So she had the neighbor, Mr. Mudd, come and nail one of the doors shut. And it seemed to me it was the back door, but that doesn't seem to me like a good idea, but nevertheless, that's my memory.
And this was in Weiser.
This was in Weiser, yes.
Okay.
And also, there was a time when mother was going to take the train and go see daddy at whatever camp he was at. And she purchased a beautiful gold colored suit, soft gold. And that suit lasted until Yakima. Anyway, it was a very pretty suit. And then she also had beautiful nylons with that seam up the back and beautiful new pumps, black pumps.
Is that a shoe?
That's a shoe. It's a
Okay.
high-heeled shoe.
Okay.
And she brought them home and laid them out, it seemed to me, on the table. And I just remember all that was so beautiful. And at some point I put them on and got up on the kitchen table and started dancing.
Oh.
And I was scolded, of course. Anyway, but she did go and visit daddy. She also had her picture taken, and the one that you have seen, with her hair a little bit long. And she's wearing, I think it's a kind of a green blouse. She had it taken to send a picture to daddy. And the photographer, I remember when she came home, she said, he told her she had $1 million smile.
Let's see if we can find that photo real quick.
Okay.
And let's see if it's I don't see it here. Let me sort by her name. It should be here.
I think I saw it as you were scrolling by
Oh.
there.
Okay, I'll stop then.
Stop where?
Well, I'm just looking to see. I don't see a photo of her. Hang on, can you see my screen? You're still just has your name on the screen.
Shall I go out and come back? Or shall you go out and come back? I'm gonna hit this X and see what happens.
Okay.
And then I might have to come back in. Okay.
Okay.